Educational Communications and this station present Environmental Directions with Nancy Perlman. On this series, we explore the effects of human influence on the Earth's ecosystems and discuss solutions to environmental problems which affect the quality of life on this planet. Environmental Directions gives you the kind of information you need to help you participate in decisions impacting your community, the nation, and the world. Now, here's your host, Nancy Perlman.
Hello, with me is Elizibeth Kucinich. She is co-founder of Global Environment Media. She's executive director of Global Partnerships. She's an award-winning environmental film producer, such films as GMO, OMG, Hot Water, and many others. She's a professor on the advisory board for the vice chancellor at Coventry University. She was also appointed an expert to land and soil panels by the European Commission, and she is involved with many ecological organizations. Welcome. It's a pleasure to have you with us.
Thank you so much. It's wonderful to be with you, Nancy.
Please tell us more about this 24/7 digital media network with environmental news that you have co-founded with your husband, Dennis Kucinich, with Michael Clemente, Christian Moore, Vincent Roger, supported by Prince Albert II of Monaco Foundation. You're involved with so many different issues, and you want the public to have access via TV, internet, library, research. What's going on?
We're in a world at the moment where the main narrative is always about something falling over. And of course, we are at the point where there's a lot of issues that we're facing daily within our own challenges, within our own lives, within the political system, economic system. And when it comes to the environment, we're only ever told the bad news, and we're only ever told where the crises are. And what we wanted to do with GEM, Global Environment Media, was to acknowledge what is happening with the world, but to be able to create and to share really positively oriented content that can help people to learn how we get ourselves, move ourselves forward, and how we get out of these crises, and the wonderful things that people are doing around the world, the approaches that they're taking, the positive solutions that are coming up, and to inspire others either to engage with those people or themselves to do similar things within their own businesses, within their own communities, within their countries, their governments. This is a way for us to connect the environmental community and all those incredible people who are working around the world to share their insights and to inspire others. So we're really excited by this project.
You have taken 9 key environmental topics: energy, climate change, people on Earth, forests, the ocean, biodiversity, food, sustainable living, and water. How did you break those ecological issues down to those 9? Because to me, overpopulation is the major crisis causing all of our environmental destruction.
Remember, these are chapters that help then you to open the book of all the different subtopics that are going in there. So if we put 5 million amazing things and topics and things that people should learn about on the homepage, it will be overwhelming. So this is a way that people can access the information that they're looking for from quite a sort of scientific perspective, because, you know, that's breaking down the environment into component parts, oceans, forests, etc. But with the people on Earth section, that will be where we can explore topics of population and food and agriculture and all those kinds of things. So this is just the way that we can help people to find what it is that they're looking for. And of course, on the back end, all of these topics are so interrelated. The way that we have been viewing the world that has led us to this point of not such a good thing is that we've looked at it linearly and extractively and not really acknowledged the deep systemic dynamics. And so, of course, you might go in through the ocean's pathway, and with the things that you're watching, you might find yourself in a completely different category because everything is intersected. And this is the beginning. So GEM was launched just a few weeks ago. It's in its phase 1 stage. We have a lot of development which is underway, but we wanted to release it and show the world what we were doing so that we can get more engagement, more feedback, more content, learn about the different things that people are doing around the world, to build more partnerships and get more people on our advisory board, because we really want to give visibility and voice and a place that people can share and inspire each other, and to be able to receive information and then act. So my mother always said, turn a negative thought into a positive action. So we have tried it with GEM to make it so when people are trying to understand different things that are happening in the world, that they can find the place that they're looking for easily and then move deeper into subject matter and interconnectivity.
Let's talk about about some of those issues as an example of the kind of information you would be presenting. We all know we need water. We need clean water. I know you have done a film about water that is radioactive. How serious a problem is having polluted water and water that is radioactive?
Well, as it sounds, it's a very serious problem if that's the water you're drinking. It's a big issue here in the United States that it's not really talked about at the moment, and so that's why we made the documentary Hot Water, which covered a number of states in the United States, but quite frankly, we could have probably gone to most of the states in the U.S. and uncovered some of the concerns. We started, actually, it was one of my best friends, Liz Rogers, who was making a documentary called On Sacred Ground at an American Indian reservation down in the Southwest, and she was doing a documentary on something completely different, and what she found was all these people were dying of cancer, and she thought it was just an isolated thing that was happening on one reservation, but decided to go back and actually explore to make a documentary about that community and the issue of radioactive contamination. But what she found was it was spread all over the Southwest, either from uranium mining or from the nuclear test in the Nevada test site, or a whole host of different things that is causing this issue. And the number of Superfund sites, the really badly contaminated sites that we have around the United States that she was looking at. So it's something that definitely we need to address. And of course, you look at that problem-solving idea of, we need to address climate change. A lot of people are thinking that nuclear is the answer, but this documentary really highlights how it really is a very big issue of what's happening either for, as they say, the destructive weapons development side of life or the energy creation side of nuclear is devastated ecologies, landscapes, communities, health. It's a really big problem.
Biodiversity is so important to life. We need to have a variety of animals and plants and to have the ecosystems for them to survive and do well. And when I started environmental work decades ago, there were 5 to 10 species a day becoming extinct, and I thought 50 years later that number would get smaller, but it seems to be getting larger. Are we going to be able to protect the rare and endangered species and keep the variety of plant and animal life on this planet?
One of the things we're trying to do with GEM is to help to create the bridges of understanding and the bridge of relationship between, the human world and the rest of the world. And we've been really taught in so many different ways in the sort of invisible infrastructure, which is our thinking mind, that our culture really embeds into us, that we're somehow separate. But what we're finding and what we're really waking up to very rapidly is that we're a fully integrated part of the natural world, and we have to understand how to live in it and how to coexist. A lot of people think that nature is on the sidelines and the peripheries, and nature is pretty, and nature is wildlands that are luxurious even. They're not part of a functioning economy. They're not part of something that's really supporting humanity. But of course, they're absolutely central to our own survival. And as you said, biodiversity is absolutely key. So with GEM, building the relationship of understanding and helping people to understand truly that resilient communities and wonderful, vibrant communities are ones that have cultural diversity and racial diversity and diversity of thought and philosophy. The same is true of the natural and the ecological world. We need as much diversity as possible. And when people start to understand, say, the magic of the way that our food is grown, we might think of soil as being just brown, dirty stuff that holds a plant and a root structure. But when we look into that soil, there's millions of microbes that are in there supporting the plant, like an external digestive system where the plant takes carbon out of the atmosphere and turns it into its own body and turns it into sugars with carbohydrates and exudes those sugars down into the root system that feeds the microbiome, which in turn feeds it. And these incredible symbiotic relationships that occur between multitudes of organisms that make up what a wonderful world that we live in, not just from beauty, but from health and creativity and our own vibrancy and strength. We're facing, obviously, tremendous challenges when the world feels like we have to solve discrete problems, and the discrete problem is to destroy an area in order to create something new or whatever it might be. We have to be starting to think differently and to think relationally. We have to slow down the ecological destruction and the destruction of biodiversity, because if we don't, that is our own demise. So we're failing abysmally at that, but I'm really hopeful that people will be able to learn more and be able to start to engage and understand the absolute, science doesn't touch this. to some degree. It's such a mystery. When I speak with soil scientists who've worked on soil for decades, they realize that the more they're researching, the more they're realizing that they don't know, and the more they're finding out. So it's incredible to also encourage people to start to look at these natural sciences, at ecology, and to learn more, and for our businesses then in turn to be able to think about how we can live in the way that we want to live, but by supporting the earth and not destroying all of these wild zones.
Back in 1968, I read The Population Bomb, one of the first environmental books written by Dr. Paul Ehrlich, and it pointed out that our carrying capacity of the earth is about 2 billion people. And yet we have over 7 billion now. Projections mean very soon we're going to have 10 billion people. That means we have to provide food, shelter, clothing, all the resources to take care of those people and still leave the ecosystems for the wildlife. One of your key topics is people on Earth. We have to preserve and protect the various cultures and people. There's still a handful that have not been westernized and industrialized and don't want to be contacted by modern society and want to live in their traditional ways. But how are we going to deal with this issue of so many people on the planet needing so many resources?
Yeah, well, of course, there's immense diversity of impact with our culture and lifestyle. So here in the United States, we have some of the greatest impact per capita because of the amount of energy we use, water we use, the expectation of all of the items we have around us is totally different from if you were to live in an African village, which I did for a year and a half out in the bush, and understand the way that large numbers of children, but the impact of those families is, very negligible in comparison. One of the things that I have worked on a lot in my time, not necessarily around population, but really looking at impact, is looking at ecological health and human health and how diet is key, agricultural practice is key. Because as you say, we have to feed all of these billions of people, and it's not that we can feed them once a week. We have to feed people every single day, and that's perfectly fine. There's ways in which the world feeds itself, and the world feeds billions and billions and billions of entities of life. But we can look at efficiencies of what it is that we eat. So not only do we have the billions of people, if those billions of people are eating part of an animal or a whole animal or 20 animals, depending on how large or small those animals are per day, we have to be feeding those animals in order to feed us. And that is where some really big ecological impacts come in. And then we have to think about, well, how is it that we perceive our landscapes? How do we perceive our farming systems? Is it that we should move to industrial intensification, which is what has happened here in the United States with thousands and thousands of cows on one feedlot? Or is it that we should look at more ecological systems? I like to think that we should be looking to nature for our inspiration, because she has been feeding billions of organisms for a very, very long time under various circumstances and ecological conditions.
We have a wonderful, wonderful earth that is supporting us, and you have so much great information on your new website, your new 24 live, you call it linear experience, to have video on demand about these solution-oriented videos to talk about all these environmental problems on GEM. And I want to thank you so very much for making these resources available. Thank you for being my guest.
Thank you so much.
I have been speaking with Elizibeth Kucinich, who is co-founder of Global Environment Media and executive director of Global Partnerships, as well as being an award-winning environmental film producer and professor. I'm Nancy Pearlman. Thank you very much for joining us, and do tune in again next week.
If you would like free information about these environmental issues, go to www.ecoprojects.org or call 310-559-9160. Environmental Directions with your host, Nancy Pearlman, is a community affairs program of the nonprofit organization Educational Communications and this station.